Greetings and welcome to Hexed Encountered. I'm Joe. It is time for our next installment here in our gameplay example from the examples of play for the game by Swords and Bayonets. This is Great Battles of the American Civil War from GMT Games and designer Allen Dickerson. We are looking at the current status of the Confederates. They have, we're about to begin turn 3. Their efficiency last turn was a 2, so you reveal that to your opponent, right? And down here we see that they have the 10 victory points on the 2 and the 1 victory point on the 3, the markers. They do have 23. I had overlooked, forgotten, messed up, however you want to put it, the calculation for the victory points. And Stigler, who's Allen Dickerson, the designer, he came and posted that they carry over from turn to turn. So they being the rebels, picked up 12 additional points, victory points, for retaking one of their entrenchment hexes. So they currently have 23 victory points. The Union, which had an efficiency of 3 last turn, they are, well, let's just do this, shall we? We can slide this guy right up here, and you can see the Union's display and their victory point total. So we are, again, turn 3. They had a 3 efficiency last turn. They don't have anybody eliminated, although the Zouaves the 5th New York, were collapsed by the combat with the rebels last turn. So they are basically out of the picture at the moment, because they cannot be rallied in a one-day battle, this being the Battle of Big Bethel on June 10th, 1861, which was a one-day battle. So they are out of it, essentially. I mean, they're still on the map, but they're not, they can't be used for combat. So now we have, the Union has 7 victory points. They did have 10 after turn 1. They have 7 after turn 2 for having lost that aforementioned rebel entrenchment hex. Okay, so put this back together and we are ready to start turn number 3. Okay, so here we see the battlefield as it is currently situated. We do have everybody in the picture here. Now, one thing I did want to mention, there's actually a mention of Union reinforcements here in turn 3, but I believe, based on another comment from a viewer, that this example of play does not feature reinforcements. But the point is to learn how the game works, and so far I feel like this is doing an excellent job of accomplishing that objective. So we're going to start turn 3, the 1100-hour turn. And this, as always, we start with the initiative segment. Segment 1 of the sequence of play is initiative determination. Now, the Confederates enjoyed the initiative last turn, and they get to add a +1 DRM to their roll. So it's a basic dice off. And the Union gets a 7, so they roll a 7. The CSA rolls a 7 as well, but that +1 DRM pushes them to 8. And the Confederates retain the initiative. So now we move to 2A, which is command determination. So looking at the map, the Union forces are in great shape. Pierce, they have 2 commanders on map. Pierce is here, and his units, he's on the stack with 2 of his units. 2 more are right here, a mere 2 and 3 hexes away. And then he's got some artillery that's just off map, or off shot rather, right down here. And then Washburn is over here with his entire brigade right there as well. So those are the Union. They have no issues there. On the rebel side, D.H. Hill is well in command of his commander, Magruder, okay, and has almost all of his command north of Wythe Creek, which is the main water feature here. All of his units, most of them at least, are within his command range. Now, his command range, if we look at his counter, you can see his command range is the 4 in the black circle there. So anyone within 4 of him is okay. And there is a little bit of a nuance to the way command range it works out in terms you use movement points, and we're going to go through that. We've gone through it last turn. We're going to go through it again. So you've got the as the book mentions, waterlogged North Carolina A. This is a battalion of the 1st North Carolina Regiment. They crossed Wythe Creek, and because they were under attack orders, they had to do it by wading the creek. They couldn't cross the bridge. So what orders you're under, and you can see that we have attack orders all over the place here. Everybody's being aggressive, so we've got everybody under attack orders currently, and they were unable to cross via the bridge. They had to wade across the creek, and therefore they're wet. And they are also disordered, and disordered is noted by the D there in the upper left. So not only are they wet, which has no game impact, but they are disordered, and they are they're in Hill's command range because the command range can trace using the road movement bonus, even if the brigade's under attack orders. So this road and bridge actually helps them in that regard in terms of command range. Did not help them so much in terms of getting the 1st North Carolina A Battalion across the creek without having to do it the old-fashioned way. So now we've got some units here in the Fishhook, which is right here. Right, that is the 1st Virginia. They are out of command range. As you might guess at a glance, we can see D.H. Hill's up here. They're all the way down here. They are not in command range. Okay, so the Montague Battalion near Bethel Church will have to make do on their own. So Bethel Church is up here, and the Montague Battalion, I think I pulled off the map. They're right here. So they are, I believe, facing they all have to face a vertex. So actually on the picture in the book, they're facing that way. Okay, facing does matter. So you have to make sure you have your units facing the correct way, and you do that by using the colored bar at the top of the counter. Okay. So the worst thing is they're stuck in attack orders and will always stand and fight if they are shock attacked, because they will not have an option to retreat. So we're talking about units that are out of command range. Okay, with no brigadier within command range, they won't be able to change their orders to a more defensive posture such as advance unless Hill hightails it back there and then rolls to change orders during the turn to come. Okay, so that is some of the impact of being out of command range. Now we go to 2A efficiency and draw for efficiency. Now we end up with 3 for the Union again. Whoops, and I dropped it. So you put it on your display like this, but you know as the commander that it's a 3. And then you reveal it at the end of the turn. So you're kind of working on the honor system. So the Union is a 3, and the Confederates, once again, are a 2. So the Union gets 1 more activation, but the Union does have 2 brigades, and the Confederates only have 1. So the Confederates can use an activation. They get, well, in this case, having only one brigadier is an issue for them, because if they had 2 like the Union does, Washburn's all the way over here, and Pierce is all the way over here, and all their men are still under command because they have their brigade commander, blah, 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 spit it out. They have their brigadier alongside with them. Okay. So, but because, and here's where you get bit again by that command range. So 2 out of command rebel units, okay, so these 2, this guy and this guy, are out of command. They can only be activated once. Everybody else, again, it's all 1 brigade for the rebels. They can be activated twice, and the Union forces can be activated 3 times. So that's how that works. 2C, actually efficiency is 2B, I believe, but 2C and 2D are the divisional and reinforcement orders. So before the players decide on orders, we have a rule unique to Big Bethel. We must roll to see if the Union reinforcements arrive early. So I know from, again, being tipped off that the roll will fail and they won't get their reinforcements here. Now, on the turn track for the Union, it says Union gets reinforcements on a roll of 0, 1, or 2, 0 to 2, which is basically a 30% chance. But as the book tells us, oh, well, I was misled maybe, perhaps. It says, if we roll 0 to 2, they will appear at the south edge of the map. The roll is a 1. The 2 trailing regiments of the 1-1 DVA, that's the Department of Virginia, arrive ahead of historical schedule with a chance to improve federal forces. Now, with no division leader on the map, the on-map Union units can only change orders at the start of their activations using the orders change table. The reinforcements can be assigned whatever orders the owning players wish, unless the scenario or battle-specific rules say otherwise. So those 2 regiments will enter under advance orders to give them the ability to get to the action quicker than if they were under the attack orders, like the rest of the brigade. D.H. Hill, who's in command vis-a-vis Magruder, can change his brigade's orders automatically and does so to advance. So he's changing his orders from attack to advance. Now, the markers are double-sided. You can see March. March is not available as an order in this particular battle, but is available in some of the other battles, as it is in some of the rest of the series. Okay, so effectively what that does is, again, here's the command range thing again. This group, this clump here in the center, they all get the order change because they're all within range of D.H. Hill. These 2, again, not in range, so they actually stay under attack orders. Now you can put a marker on there to indicate that. I'll just put it up here by the, well, it might be better to put it here because they're not in danger of getting hit by the Union, at least not right away. So they're up here and out of the way. So I know they're on attack orders. I don't necessarily need to put a marker on there. If I were playing with an opponent, we would make sure there was an attack marker there so there's no confusion. But anyway, here in the fish hook, I'm going to leave this marker here so that we know that the 1st Virginia there is that 1st or 3rd? That's 3rd Virginia. I need new glasses. These guys are messing me up. Anyway, 3rd Virginia is out of command and still under attack orders. Okay, so all of that leads us to the rebels' first activation. Okay. So Hill completes his defensive positioning near the woods by moving the 2 infantry units to the edge of the clearing. So that's these 2 right here. And we're just going to move them both 1 hex, like so, to put them in position to defend against the Union forces that have crossed the ford of Wythe Creek, which is right in this hex right here, which you can't really see because there's units on top of it. All right, to the south, there are some hard decisions to be made. The 3rd Virginia can only use 1 of the 2 activations, but remember that the Union player doesn't know if they'll have 1 or 2 activations because the Union player currently does not know what the CSA drew in the efficiency. If they drew a 3, they could perhaps have 2. Okay, I did not actually, now, we have out-of-command markers. They're on the flip side of the collapsed marker. So I'm going to put, and you can see it says -1 AM, -1 activation marker. So the Union player knows these guys have 1 fewer, but this is the key part of keeping that efficiency marker on the question mark side, is that he does not know whether or not the Confederates have a 3 or a 2. So if they had 3, then they could activate both these guys twice. But since they don't, they can only activate them once. He does not know that yet. Okay. Now, we do have a draw cup. I didn't mention that. I'm trying to kind of throw little tips in there for people who may not have watched the first 3 episodes. Ideally, you would have watched from the beginning. That's the best way to get the whole shebang, because just like if you were playing this out yourself from the examples of play booklet, you would start at the beginning, I would think, and work your way through. So that's what I'm doing on your behalf. Anyway, back to business. Okay, so Union player does not know if they'll have 1 or 2 activations, so the 3rd Virginia might be able to hold that pivotal end of the earthworks, but they decide to make sure they can't be easily flanked, so they refuse the left. This is another thing that we have not yet talked about. They refuse the left, which costs 1 movement point, okay? So we're gonna get a marker there for that as well. So if you're unfamiliar with what refusing means, what they're doing basically is bending their line to the left. So I guess I'll put it like that. Basically, they're bending their line this way, which allows them to protect their flank. It should actually be like this. So because their left is this side, it's right as we're looking at it, because we're looking at it upside down. It's actually facing this way. They have an open hex side here. By refusing left, they bend their formation to the left and give themselves, they protect their flank, essentially. They've doubled their frontage, or not doubled it, but they've expanded their frontage by doing that, which makes them a little bit tougher than they would otherwise be if they were in a standard formation, standard line formation. So that's a little bit of a nuance here in the Civil War, or the GBACW, shall we say. That is Rule 7.3 in the series rules. So First North Carolina A attempts to rally to good order. They're here. Now, again, just to reiterate, you see the G4. G indicates they are green. The 4 is their cohesion rating. So the G will cause a die roll modifier on some things, but the 4 is the number that you really want to be interested in, because that's going to be the determining factor. You need to roll a 4 or less to rally your unit. They roll a 7, which fails, and they narrowly avoid a loss of a strength point, because if they had rolled an 8, that would be double their cohesion, and that would cause a loss of a strength point. So they wipe their brow and give a nice whew for that one, and they remain disordered. So now north of the county bridge, which is right there, the Montague Battalion moves down the road with their lone activation. So they're going to move, and here's the road, right? So they will move, still not wanting to commit to one flank or the other, and that will complete the Confederates' activation. So you might say, well, where do they move? Well, they've got a movement rating of 6. Okay, so they are at Bethel Church. To move here, they'll have to move through the woods. And on our terrain effects chart, woods for foot cost 2. Okay, so they would move, they can pivot once for free, and then they'd have to pivot again, I think. So that would be 2, and 2 is 4. And then on the road, they are still under attack orders. So I think that changes what their movement cost is on the road. And trying to see a picture of where they are here. I don't really see it, but I think if we say that that's 4, 5, 6. We'll just move them here. I think that's right. It costs 1. Road is 1 and it's half, but it's only half when units under advance orders pay 1. Units under march orders pay a half. So they are just paying, because they're still under attack orders. I think that means they I'm going to put them here. I have to check. Being under attack orders, they might, I think they can still, well, let me check this. Yes, my memory was correct. They have to use the hex cost, not the road cost. So if they started here and they went, they go 2, right? That would be cheaper than pivoting. Then they could go 2 more and then come out here onto the clear would be 5. But to go in here would cost them another 2 because it's woods. So they're going to stop right there, and I'm going to put their out of command marker with them, although they are now 1, 2, 3, 4. They remain, if I remember correctly, out of command until the end of the turn, at which time they would be back in command because they are now within Hill's range. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, they're within his range. Now, okay, so that is done. That ends their activation. So we take their chit that was in the active play, AM's in play on their marker or their their record track, and put it in the AM's played. So now we would draw our next one, and it is the random event. So this guy goes in there every time, random event, and you roll a die, and if it's an 8 or a 9, you get a random event. Okay, so this will come out, and I'll put it aside because it goes back in for next turn. The roll is a 2, no event. Okay, so then we draw. So what's left in there now are 3 Union activation markers and 1 for the Confederates. So with a 75% chance, the Union does succeed in pulling out one of their own activation markers. So now the Union gets to do their activation. So Pierce is going to start with some hyper aggression. Okay, so what's the first move? The 1st New York and 2nd New York reinforcements are brought up the Hampton Road at the double quick under advance orders. So we're going to shift down to show this. Okay, so these are the full regiment counters for the 2 regiments, 1st and 2nd New York. You can see they both have 15 strength and green with 4 cohesion. Now, in this case, we will split them into battalions, 3 equal battalions of 5 strength points each. So you can see here's 2nd New York, ABC, and here's 1st New York, ABC as well. Okay, so we're going to use these guys as opposed to the full-on regiment counter, and of course they do have advance orders. So they start here, and because they're in advance orders, they can't stack. So we'll start with 1st New York A, go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, they're in advance order. So road movement costs a half. So half 1, 2, 3, 4. And I think they have to stop behind the gun, I think. Actually, no, they don't. They can go 5, 6. Actually, they're here. And this guy will slot in behind them. And C will stack with the gun. And then the 2nd will fill in behind these guys. All on the road because they are under advance orders. And I'm just going to kind of stick this here and point that way. Kind of. Now they should be actually facing cocked off to the side like this. Because again, facing matters, and you have to be facing one of the vertices of the hex, not one of the sides. So that is how that looks. Okay, so now, as we mentioned earlier, Pierce is going to be aggressive. The 3rd New York B here is going to attack the 3rd Virginia there in their earthworks, and to do so, they'll charge, but they will elect to actually fire first, because you can do that. If you forego firing, you get a +1 DRM on the combat, the shock combat. But the tricky part is this guy is a green unit, And so therefore, there's a greater chance that they're going to balk at actually committing to the shock attack, and therefore you'd be wasting an opportunity. So you increase your chance of actually making them take a UDD, which is the Universal Disorder Die Roll. Because if you can fire at them and hit them and make them, they're not disordered, but if you make them disordered, then that will make them more likely to break when you do attack them. They do have a 6-4 advantage in strength points as well. So the Union player decides to forego the infantry charge bonus and fire at the enemy unit after they move adjacent. So they're going to move one, and they're going to fire. And so I've gone through how this works. Okay, you account for the weapon and the range, and that will give you a modifier, and then you use your strength point with the modifier to determine what happens when you roll for the attack. Okay, so we'll walk through. Okay, so they get no flanking bonus because they're firing at the refused flank. And did they move here then? Let me look at the picture here in the book. They did. So they actually wheeled around. Instead of just going one, they kind of went around this way, and they're here. And they are on their flank, but they don't get a bonus for it because the Confederate unit refused his flank. So he's got troops there, and they are facing them. So you don't get a flanking bonus, but neither do the Rebs get earthwork protection. So that was the key part with that. Okay, so we do factor in a -1 for the green unit, and there's no DRM. So we roll a 5, D +1, and low ammo for the 3rd New York B, but the Rebels get a UDD -2 and pass. So they're going to return fire, but with only 2 strength points to fire through their refused flank because they've split their unit. Okay, so they have 4 strength points, but only 2 of them are facing the 3rd New York Battalion B there. So they only get to use 2 of their strength points. So as with most things, if you try to take an advantage, if you move something to make something a little bit more advantageous, there is usually a cost to doing that, and that is the cost. So they fire, and they don't get any joy out of their attack either. So a lot of noise and fury, signifying not much. So for their trouble, they get a low ammo marker, which gives them a -2 DRM on their next attack until they get rallied, or they just, rallying will automatically a rally attempt will automatically fix their ammunition issue. Okay, so now the 2nd USA battery, which is sitting right here underneath the 1st New York C Battalion, is going to fire. Okay, so they are in the earthworks. So this is 2 12-inch howitzers, or 12-pounders, 12-pounders at a range of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that is a -1 net modifier. The roll's an 8, gets moved to a 7, and that is just a D, which means the Rebels take an unmodified UDD. They roll a 3 and pass. So now, finally, Pierce will attempt to rally the 3rd New York A with a -1 on the roll for the Brigadier's presence. That roll is a 3 and a success. So if we unstack this stack here, here's Pierce, he's your commander. The 5 is the current strength of the 3rd New York A. Okay. Underneath that is the collab Zouave, who only has 1 strength point. So he flips over from his disordered side to his ordered side. And this is a 5, I believe, still. And put that there. And we put Pierce up here as well. And I'm going to stick the OK next to him. Okay. All right, so that's a success. And the Federal, they're now going to move on to the shock phase. So unlike fire combat, shock combat takes place after everything else in terms of an activation. So they are now going to attempt to storm this position and take it. Again, the 5th New York did take it, but they got beat up in doing so. And then when the 3rd Virginia came down, they knocked them out and ended up collapsing them, so rendering them combat ineffective. Now for the shock combat, the 3rd New York B is going to press their luck and undertake a shock attack versus the 3rd Virginia. Rebel units cannot use retreat before shock due to still being under attack orders, as we talked about earlier. So now the all-important Union green commitment check is a 2, which means they pass. So again, when you're rolling against cohesion, which is again what this was, you always have to get equal or below the unit's cohesion. This is a green unit with a cohesion of 4, so they did make it. Okay. Following that is the Defender pre-shock cohesion check, also passed easily with a roll of 1. The pre-shock reaction fire reduced to just 2 strength points again through the refused flank is again ineffective. So the attack goes in 6 strength points versus 4. Okay, so they do get to use their entire strength here because it's in the hex. So even though they've kind of stretched themselves to be, to make their front wider, they are still all in that hex. Now, so neither side is disordered. We have a 1.5 to 1 odds. Okay, neither side is disordered, which means no die roll for that. And the attack is through a frontal hex side owing to the refused flank, right? Not a flank. It's not a flank attack, which it would have been had they not refused the line. Okay, so the die roll is a 6, resulting in a Defender retreat. So the 3rd Virginia is pushed backwards to BB 0914. So 914 is right where that attack marker is. So they get pushed here. Okay. And they lose the refused flank because they moved. Okay, or retreated. That is in series rule 7.33, and they are disordered as well. So they flip over to their disordered side. They maintain their facing. Retreat does not change your facing, so they maintain their facing. They are still under attack orders, and they are still out of command. Okay, at this point, the 3rd New York A advances into the earthwork hex, adjusts its facing towards the enemy, so they can reface as they move in here. So they're going to turn this way to face them. They still have low ammo. Okay, now they have to incur the mandatory post-shock disorder, so they get disordered as well. So now they really need a rally effort to get them ammo and hopefully flip them back to non-disordered side. That completes Pierce's activation. So then, maybe 3/4 of a mile to the east, we have Washburn's brigade, and he's going to activate. So the line of 1st North Carolina battalions is formidable indeed. It's these 2 guys right here, right, with strengths of 5 each. They also have cavalry here and here with Hill. So the rebels are in good shape, although they don't have any defensive terrain bonuses. They're all in open terrain. Okay, I've zoomed in a little bit so we get a better view of this. So Washburn's going to be pretty aggressive here, and what he's going to do is he's going to charge both of these regiments and keep them in regimental format, small front, hard punch. They are going to charge through the woods right at the C Battalion of the 1st North Carolina. Okay, and then along Washburn will go with them, and then along behind them will come the 7th New York, who will cross the ford. They cross the ford there, and the artillery will follow them, which they can do. So, and then they're still under attack orders, and they're still okay with fatigue. Okay, so they have now done that. So the move costs 7 movement points for the artillery, which are always considered under advance orders unless under march orders, which they're not because we can't use that in this. 2 movement points for hex BB 2111, 1 movement point to cross the ford, and 4 to enter the wooded hex beyond. Okay. So the artillery, let's see. Because the woods block the line of sight to the enemy, the artillery can safely move closer than 4 hexes from them. Okay, series rule 9.55, using either option for artillery proximity. Okay, so we won't get into the nitty-gritty of the rules, but if you have the series rules, you can look that up. Okay, now to the shock. Once again, target designation is clear. Washburn Stack is charging the 1st North Carolina. It says B, but I have them flipped. We'll just flip them so that we can stick with what's listed in the book. So 1st North Carolina B. During step 2, the rebels, now under advance orders, decide to retreat before shock. So this is from series rule 11.33, step 2. They are in good order, so this carries no UDD risk to them. Okay, so they will retreat to BB 1609, it says, I think. 1809. Yeah, right there, 1809. Okay. All right, so by doing that, that allows these guys to move into that hex. So the shock ends with no post-shock disorder for the would-be attackers because they didn't actually shock them. The rebels basically pulled back, right? So that's the idea of retreat before shock. Okay, now reaction facing. These guys have just moved up in pursuit of the Battalion B. Battalion C sitting right here. Okay, the 1st North Carolina C, having an enemy unit advance or move onto their flank, can risk a UDD to change facing or refuse a flank. So they're going to opt for the former. They're going to change their facing. They change facing and roll a 0. They make the adjustment like seasoned veterans despite being green troops. And they are now facing them, so they rotated. Okay, so now they're on the flank of the Union forces there, and that ends the Union activation. Okay, so next out of the activation marker pool is the 2nd, and unbeknownst to the Union, the final rebel activation for the turn. So that would be this guy right here. So it's going to go there. The Union marker gets moved to the played side. Okay. So the 3rd Virginia, now shoved out of the earthworks south of Wythe Creek, must pass as it can only use 1 activation by dint of being out of command. Likewise, the Montague Battalion over near Bethel Church must also sit it out. 1st North Carolina A attempts to rally itself and rolling a 6 again fails. That's this guy right here. He is stuck. Okay. The focus now shifts to the attempted federal surge north of the ford. The rebel player must realize that if this Yankee infantry column isn't checked, it can gobble up a lot of earthworks hexes in short order, which garners victory points for the Union and takes them away from the Confederates. So, yeah. They must be broken up now. Fortunately, D.H. Hill has set up his cavalry to possibly launch a charge into the flank of the Yankee infantry and could cause a timely rout. First things first, D.H. Hill must successfully change his orders back to attack. So there is a die roll involved in that. And according to the example, they successfully do that. This is your brigade orders change table. So you roll a die. And you can see if the brigadier is stacked with his division leader, which is not the case here. We don't have a corps overall command here either, but he successfully changed his orders by rolling high enough to do so. He rolls an 8 and doesn't even need his +1 order change DRM. Now the rebel player notices a hitch in his plans for a cavalry charge. When the Yankees advanced into BB 1909, BB 1908 is now adjacent to that unit, and because that hex isn't occupied by a friendly unit, it cannot be used to trace command. Thus, the Peninsula Cavalry is out of Hill's command range. So Hill is here, and the Peninsula Cavalry is up here, and where he's now out of command range of those guys because he has to go around the bend there because of the Union infantry being in this hex. So that is going to be an issue. The Peninsula Cavalry is out of command's radius by 1, and thus does not receive the order to change to attack, so the rebels cannot attempt a cavalry charge after all. Bad luck. Still, there are 500 muskets in front of those Yankees, and they should be able to send them hurtling back into the woods. The 2 1st North Carolina battalions will fire, first with the unit in flanking position because this will bring no return fire. So 5 strength points of muskets with a +2 at range of 1 because they're adjacent, as you can plainly see. Okay. They get another +1 for prep fire and another for flank bonus. They get a green unit firing -1, but the +3 net is a pretty tight one. They roll a 1, which is a bad roll on an attack, but that gets adjusted up to a 4. So it is a D. It would be a D -1 if Washburn were present, which he is. So the Union UDD 6 causing disorder for the lead top units. On the other units must also UDD because the lead topmost unit is in the hex has disordered. Their roll is 1. So our top unit, which in this case is the 4th Mass, these fine gentlemen right here, are now disordered, but the 1st Vermont, sorry, is not. Okay, so one in good order, one is not in good order. Okay. So now return fire. 7 strength points is the maximum that can be fired from a hex at any one time. This means the entire 4th Mass and a single strength point of the 1st Vermont can return fire. That single SP shot might prove vital in the end, though. Let's see what happens. 4th Mass fires, 6 strength points of muskets, +2. Green unit firing -1. Disordered, -1. So no modifiers. The roll's a 2 for a D -1. The UDD's a 3 adjusted to a 2, which is a pass. Now the single strength point from the 1st Virginia, 1 SP of muskets with the +2. They get a +1 for prep fire. They get a -1 for being green, and that's a net +2. The roll is a 2 adjusted to a 4, which is a miss on the 1 column of the fire table, unfortunately for them. Now the Richmond battery, which is back here in the earthworks here, they can also do something here. They don't have a shot, though, because they're blocked by their comrades that are confronting the Union forces, right? Their line of sight goes literally through the backs of 1st North Carolina B, so no joy there. The cavalry are still poised for their attack. D.H. Hill gets his dander up and decides to send half of his infantry hurtling into the Yankee flank. He elects to hold the North Carolina B, 1st North Carolina B, back as reserve in case the attack goes badly. He moves forward to lead the 1st North Carolina personally, 1st North Carolina C. So he's going to join those boys right there. We get another shock attack. Okay, the rebels in shock step 1 announce their target and their lone participating unit, the 1st North Carolina C. In step 2, the Union are under attack orders, so they can't retreat before shock. Now the North Carolinians must pass a green attacker commitment roll with a -1 DRM for D.H. Hill. The roll's a 2, so they are primed for the assault. In step 4, the Union must make a pre-shock cohesion check with the disordered 4 Massachusetts rolling for the entire stack with a -1 from Washburn. They roll a 0 and pass easily. There's no defensive reaction fire from the Union because the attacker's on their flank. Benefit of a flank assault. Now, in goes the shock. Because the rebel unit started its activation adjacent, right? It's right next to it. There's no infantry charge bonus. Calculation is as follows. 5 strength points, that's the North Carolina versus 12 on the Union side. So that's a 1-to-3 ratio, which is a -3. The defender has a disordered unit, which is a +1, and the crucial factor, the flank position of +3. So even though the odds are bad, hitting them in the flank offsets the fact that they are largely outnumbered here. So that actually gives them they don't enjoy a +4 front and flank because the unit in front is not participating. And then that unit, the Rebs get another +1 from D.H. Hill, who is an A for aggressive brigadier. So there is an A on here. Pick him up. You can see the A right above the 4. So he's an aggressive sort and gives them a +1 DRM. All of that adds up to a +2 DRM. Now, step 6 is resolution. We roll a 4, which gets adjusted by 2 to a 6. Okay, defender retreats 1 hex and is disordered. Okay, hex BB 2010, which is right behind him, is the only choice, right? Because he can't retreat adjacent to that unit, so he has to move that way. Okay, and then there's going to be some other issues here, right? He can't go to 2009 or BB 1910 because they're adjacent to the enemy units and do not extend the distance from the attacker. First Vermont's disordered, and this is a second disorder for the 4th Mass, so it must roll to determine its fate with a -1 DRM from Washburn. And unfortunately for them, they roll a 6 and the unit routes. Okay, so this is going to get interesting here. I'm just going to move some things around so we get a better look. Okay, so Washburn will end up retreating with his men. 4th Mass took that second disorder, so they're going to route. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, they're going to get a route. They're going to actually start heading in this direction, that way. And they're going to end up in they route into the off-map route regroup box, which is on the Union display for this game. So they're off-map now, okay, having routed. Then they have to take a check, First Vermont, okay, because when a unit when you're with or adjacent to a unit that routes, you have to roll a UDD yourself. And the first Vermont is tested first. They get a -1 DRM because Washburn, even though I moved him, is still in that hex currently. Okay, but they rolled an 8, which means a second disorder. Okay, so now they have to roll again to check the second disorder result. And there is a table for this as well that I've shown before, but this is your second disorder table, and I'm zoomed in pretty high, so you don't actually roll. It's just if you fail, you look at this and it tells you like what caused it, and then what happens to your infantry and dismounted cavalry, and artillery. So in this case, they actually pass, but because they took a second disorder, they actually get a step loss. And so they were a 6, and they're going to be reduced to a 5, and they're going to reduce back here. And now we still have to roll again so Washburn comes along with the Vermont unit. And now we have to check the artillery and the 7th New York. Okay. He had to do a leader casualty roll as well, and that only anything other than a 0 is a pass. So he passes that check and does not become a casualty by rolling a 4. Okay, and so now second, that was caused by the Vermont taking the strength point loss. Okay, 7th New York was adjacent to the routing unit and must check 2, but now it gets the benefit of Washburn's presence, which is a -1. They roll a 5, adjusted to 4, and that -1 saves the 7th New York from being disordered. And the artillery also passed. So everyone passed except for the 1st Vermont. So they are disordered, and they are going to get a step loss as well. So I'm going to grab that marker and put that on there. So they are now a 5. Whoops, I grabbed a 9 instead of a 6. So that time I got the 6. Well, it's a 6 on the back and a 5 on the front. They are now, because they were a 6, they're now a 5. Now you could put it under or on top. For now, I'm just going to stick it on top. And we'll put Washburn on top there, and I'll put the OK marker next to him right there. And whew, that was a rough one, right? Okay, so now we finish off by having the North Carolinians advance into the hex, which is this one. Okay, so they are going to move in and change their facing, so they're still facing the enemy, which is down this way. Okay, Hill goes along for the ride, and they have to take their post-shock disorder, so they get automatically disordered for participating in shock combat. As you might assume or understand, shock combat is, hand-to-hand melee, up close and personal. You're going to be disordered after going through that. So, this being the second shock, the Confederate Brigade has been involved in this turn. Fatigue is accrued to level OK, and that concludes the Rebel activation, which is their last activation of the turn. And Hill gets an OK fatigue marker of his own. Okay. So I'm going to reset the shot now so that we can take a look at, with all the Confederate activations being done, we know the next 2 will both be Union. So we're going to get into that right now. Okay, so we're back with Pierce, who's right here. And he's got his reinforcements strung along the road here. Now, they remain under advance orders, okay? But Pierce and the units with him are still under attack orders, as are Washburn's men up here, who we just finished with. Finished their defense efforts, at least, which were largely unsuccessful. But anyway, Pierce can afford now to be aggressive because the presence of these guys, even though they can't really help, the fact that they are all in good order and pretty much out of reach of the Confederates means that they won't all get disordered. So he can be aggressive because you don't want to have you don't want to risk having brigade combat ineffectiveness, which happens when all of the brigade's units are disordered. In this case, he's safe to be aggressive because these guys will give him a cushion. Okay, so first he's going to start, right? He's going to start by trying to rally the shock-weary 3rd New York B. It's still adjacent to the retreating rebels and would incur a +1 DRM to the rally attempt for being adjacent to the enemy. The Union player makes the decision to aid the rally with Pierce rather than have him lead the upcoming shock. So Pierce is going to move into the hex with the 3rd New York B and help them attempt to rally. Rally attempt is made, a 2 is rolled with the -1 DRM for Pierce's star of influence, +1 for adjacency to an enemy unit, and the unit rallies successfully. Resupplying ammo, as I mentioned earlier, normally is automatic. In this case, because they are adjacent to the enemy, it's not possible. So they keep their low ammo, but they are no longer disordered. So that is worthwhile from their standpoint. Okay, so now we're going to have the 2nd USA Artillery fire at the 1st North Carolina A position, which is here. Now, again, it looks to me almost like I'm thinking of this guy. That's the Virginia. They're up here. So they're firing straight up the line there. And they do no damage. Okay, so we'll kind of keep moving here. All right, and now we're going to have the 3rd New York A surge forward once more to try to finish off the 3rd Virginia. So the 1st New York A is right here on top of this stack. Right above the collapsed. See, now I'm going to put the 5 underneath. Okay, so they're going to move 1, 2 to be here and attempt to shock those guys. And they are not in earthworks any longer. Okay, so they're going to take a crack at this. And they're going to take the +1 for the charge this time instead of firing at them. So the 3rd Virginia, because they're out of command, they are still under attack orders, as you can see right there. And they can't retreat. So the green commitment check for the Union, they roll a 0, which is a fantastic roll. And they are intent on victory. Pre-shock cohesion check for the Rebs with a +1 modifier for being disordered is a 1 modified to a 2, so they also pass. Pre-shock reaction fire occurs as follows. 4 strength points of muskets for the rebels at a +2 DRM for the range being 1. They lose 1 for being disordered. They lose 1 for being green. And it's a 0 net DRM. The roll's a 4 for a D result. The Union player passes the UDD by rolling a 4, which is exactly what he needs to do so. Okay, the attack goes in a 5-to-4 strength ratio, which gets rounded up to 1.5 to 1 because the attacker moved to contact. That's a series rule 11.43 rounding bullet 1. Okay, so the calculation. Disordered defender is a +1. Infantry charge is another +1. No participating brigadier, which is a -1. And the move to contact also gives them a +1. So that's a +2 net DRM. For combat resolution, a roll of 7 is rolled. That gets adjusted to a 9. It's a 1 hex retreat, disorder, and continued shock is the result. So the 3rd Virginia are going to skedaddle back to 0814, which is across the stream here. So they're there now. Okay, they maintain their facing. They have to make their UDD. They roll a 6 and rout. Pierce's boys are keen to press ahead to continue the shock, but there are no targets close enough to be able to take a 2 hex continued shock advance and end up adjacent to a new target, right? Because there are no other Confederate units aside from this guy and the other unit that's up here that are even close to being in range. All right, so the unit advances only 1 hex further, takes the earthworks hex BB 1014. So we can do this. They go here and then here, take that hex. They will get disordered as well. For post-shock, these guys are now routed. I'm going to take this off. They're going to go into the route regroup box. Okay, and that ends that. 3rd shock this turn for Hill's brigade. Remember, he has just 1 brigade for his whole force, and the 2nd shock for Pierce's brigade. So D.H. Hill's boys incur an additional level of fatigue to 0, and Pierce's brigade adds a level of fatigue also to 0. So let's do that. It's on the back of this fatigue marker, on the back of OK, is 0 fatigue. So they're getting worn down here. And that is true of both. I need to put this near Pierce. Okay, so with Pierce done, we move over to Washburn. Okay, now he took a bit of a bloody nose, but he's going to try to stay aggressive here. And he will first try to rally his 1st Vermont. Okay, so that would weigh into what he does after that. Okay, so he's going to try to rally the 1st Vermont, and the rally roll, which he provides a -1 DRM, but they roll a 6, which is adjusted to 5, and they needed a 4, so they remain disordered. And with things going so well to the west, the Union player decides to take a gamble and press the attack against Hill. The small but resolute 7th New York, which is all the way on the bottom. These guys right here with all of 3 strength points. think I had their facing messed up a little bit. They're facing this way. Okay, so they are going to attack. So they come and they fire with their 3 strength points of muskets. So they're going to move up. Move up here. And they're going to fire their muskets. Actually, no, they went here. Sorry. Went there and fire. Okay. So they get a +2 for being adjacent. They take a -1 for being green, and they net a +1. Roll is a 6, which gets adjusted to a 7, which is D +1, which gets knocked down to a D because of DH Hill being there. But the Rebs roll a UDD of 9, which is a massive fail, and the unit loses a strength point and must retreat 1 or 2 hexes back because of a second disorder. So they are going to move 2 back, 1, 2. We do have to do a casualty check for Hill. Okay, again, only a 0 would cause him to become a casualty. The die rolls a 9, so he passes. We do have to take a step away from this 5 to make it a 4. And they are disordered still. They're already on the disordered side. So I will put a 4 on here. And I'm going to move the fatigue marker next to our commander. So another thing that we have to take care of, even though I've already moved them, they do, even though they already got moved back, they do get their return fire. Okay, so they roll they have 5 strength points of muskets because it's not yet 4, right? Simultaneous fire. They also get the +2 for being at range 1. They are disordered and they are green. Those are -1s apiece, so that erases the +2. And the target's in the woods, which is a -1. So that's a net of a -1. They roll a 5. Now that's a natural 5, which means they're going to go low ammo. Okay, so even though it's adjusted to a 4 by the DRM, that natural 5 means low ammo for the Confederates. All right, so D, they get a D result. The Union roll a UDD 6, so they are also disordered. And then the Rebels would retreat. Okay, so we have to disorder the 7th New York. Okay, and that is that. Now, you could say, well, we've got artillery here, which is not disordered. They can move up 1 and fire. But if they move up here, they become visible to all these units. And there is a cavalry unit, which is now back in command, starting next turn, that would be able to charge them. And you have infantry units that could shoot at them, or at least, well, yeah, this one's low ammo, but he would still be close enough to do something, and that one certainly would as well. So they're not going to do that. The Union will not do that. Okay, but Washburn does need to rally one of his remaining units to stave off brigade combat ineffectiveness because all of his infantry is currently disordered. So he's going to lend his star of influence to that rally attempt, trying to rally the 1st Vermont, which remains disordered. Now for the 7th New York, they fare worse, rolling a 6, which is twice their cohesion rating, so they're going to take a step loss and remain disordered. Now, because the turn will end with all of Washburn's infantry disordered or routed, because he did lose a unit to rout as well, the brigade is rendered combat ineffectiveness. This will limit their maximum number of activations to 2 for turn 4. If he can rally one of the infantry units during that turn, they can return to combat effective status at the end of turn 4, provided that they don't have someone rout or collapse, which would keep the brigade combat ineffective for the rest of the game. Okay, and so Pierce, on his side, having just incurred more fatigue through his shock attacks this turn, decides not to rush his reinforcements ahead. They've made plenty of gains in the last hour, and there's plenty of time left to get across County Bridge and create some havoc. So there's County Bridge right there. Pierce has a nice chunk of forces right here. He's in pretty good shape. He's now combat ineffective, as I just mentioned, and his 7th New York has to take a step loss. So this is the combat ineffective brigade marker, and the back of it is for the division. We don't have a division. We only have a brigade. So he's combat ineffective, and the valiant but small 7th New York is reduced to 2 strength points. All right, so that ends the turn basically. All right. Oh, actually, Pierce can attempt a rally, so he may as well. So he's going to try to get the 2 battalions of the 3rd New York who are no longer adjacent to an enemy unit. Rally roll for 3 New York A is an adjusted 7, so that loses. That unit stays disordered and loses a strength point to go down to 6. That's this guy right here. Right? Or is that that? That's no, that's this one. That's I may have screwed this up somehow. This guy is disordered from the assault. Okay, and all right, so they both stay disordered. And then we go to phase 4C. At the end of turn segment is where the determination of Washburn's brigade as combat ineffective officially happens. Then at Big Bethel, we total up the accrued victory points. The Union now controls 2 of the earthworks south of Wythe Creek, which earns them 6 points, added to the 2 victory points for the routed 3rd Virginia, and the haul is 8 for a 3-turn total of 15. So they are at 15 now. Now on the Confederate side, they control 20, so that gives them 10 points, 20 earthwork hexes. They're routed in 1 unit, Union unit for 2, so that gives them a total of 12 for the turn, and their 3-turn total is 35. But with Pierce threatening the county bridge and likely to carry at least 2 of the earthworks south of the Wythe that are still in rebel hands, the outcome of the battle remains very much in doubt. Okay, so this is the end of the teaching example, 3 turns, and we are done with our video series here on this, at least. That is not to say we will not do more with this game. I would like to play one of the other scenarios, and so that could happen, but we will see. We will see. No promises. I have a lot of things I'd like to do and not enough time to do it all. So I hope you found this useful across the 4 videos covering all 3 turns of the example of play booklet here. I think it's a great introduction to the series and is very well done and gives us all a great look at how things work in this game, because there is a lot of complexity to the system. But as I mentioned in the previous video, everything makes sense, everything has a reason, and you can deduce the reason pretty easily. It makes the tactical, if you're familiar with the tactics used in the American Civil War, all the rules reflect that reality. So that will do it for now. If you have any questions or comments, you know what to do. Post them, and I will do my best to reply as soon as possible. Once again, I thank you for watching. Ask if you would consider liking, sharing, and or subscribing if you're not a subscriber. If you are, thanks for the support. But we are done. I'm Joe. This is Hexed Encountered. And until next time, as always, happy gaming.